Justice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. We are caught in an inescapable network of mutuality, tied in a single garment of destiny. Whatever affects one directly affects all indirectly, wrote the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. in his famous letter from a Birmingham jail. He wrote the letter in response to being referred to as an outside agitator, as if he were what we might now call a paid agitator. He argues that, in short, there is no such thing, that we are all in this together. King never took on prison abolition as a cause, but given his increasingly radical views at the time of his death, which was, of course, too early, we might expect that had he been able to live to see the time when the so-called war on drugs began, and with it the beginning of what we now call mass incarceration, that he would have. To me, part of honoring King's legacy is assessing how we have fallen short of achieving his vision, and maybe how far we haven't even gotten toward that end, as well as taking up the mantle of dreaming as he might have. This is how I have come to engaging the idea of prison abolition today. At our annual General Assembly, a national and international gathering of Unitarian Universalists who learn and worship together, as well as do the work of the Unitarian Universalist Association, our national body, the delegates voted on a number of matters. This included the renewal of our Congregational Study Action Issue, CSAI, a process individuals and congregations are invited to participate in. There is learning to be done, but also an expectation of some activity about the issue to happen. The 2025 CSAI was the Church of the Larger Fellowship's proposal, Abolition, Transformation, and Faith Formation. The CLF serves people across the country and the globe. Here in the United States, almost 2,000 of their members are incarcerated. As part of the CSAI proposal, the CLF staff have created a study guide with questions and resources that can be used as a starting point. I want to be clear, before I get started more, that no one at the CLF or likely anywhere else in the United States or the world believes that prison abolition will happen anytime soon, nor is it simply releasing prisoners into the world. It is a process we are being challenged to consider to make this world better and more just for all of us. I have far more to say than even I am willing to try to cover in this service, so I'm going to stick to just a few points today. 2 of them theological, the other is personal. The theological elements are rich and have many components. I want to start with a thread that has been woven throughout this year so far, that of othering. Wanting to separate ourselves from others, learning to differentiate who is mine or ours and who is them or theirs can be helpful at various developmental stages. We want to know who our family is, for example, because they are supposed to be the people we can trust to care for us. This certainly isn't always the case, but it's a common narrative that we hold. But othering can also be deeply problematic. It can cause harm at every level of society. It can prevent us from learning about each other, learning how to be in relationship across difference. It can foster a sense of superiority or inferiority among the us's and the them's. And one of the consequences of this is that it allows us to dehumanize each other. We've witnessed throughout history extremes of what this can mean, including genocides, as well as enslavement, caste systems, institutionalizations of various kinds, and here in the United States, I would add mass incarceration. None of these systems are possible without dehumanization, the idea that some are not or are less human than others. Dehumanizing one another takes place by individuals, as was the case with the ICE agent who shot and killed Renee Nicole Good a week and a half ago, as well as groups, organizations, and systems, as we've seen by the creation of ICE and witnessed their charge to arrest and even kidnap people off the streets for caging and deportation. As we have learned again and again in history, what happens to any of us can happen to any and all of us. When we allow people to be treated badly, beaten, starved, tortured, especially when that treatment is on behalf of the state, which I will remind us means that it is done in our names. We have no control over where that boundary may move to, of who may become the next them. Somewhat related but also separate is another theological factor, punishment. Our dominant culture, that is whiteness, has a legacy of punishing one another as a means of control. It holds in it the idea of correction as well, as if in punishing we balance out the harm that has been caused, as if in punishing we can make people pay for what they have done, as if punishing someone can ever make us whole again. As my colleague, the Reverend Jason Lydon, pointed out in one of the 2024 men's lectures on abolition, punishment is not salvific. It does not have the power to redeem or heal. He continues, punishment during this life is not only ineffective, but also it denies the potential of a transformative love offered either by God or by society. Punishment is not redemptive, and it cannot save us. As far as I am concerned, this is one of the great problems with the idea of substitutionary atonement, the idea that Jesus' death on the cross saved us all from any and all sin for all time. Punishment does not save us and cannot heal us. Have you ever been healed by punishing yourself into something? Smaller size, more muscles, higher IQ, lighter skin. In my case, it needed to be darker skin. Being more extroverted, out of a depression, not quite as much. So if it hasn't worked for us, why would we expect it will work for anyone else? People who study nonviolence and trauma and other similar fields tell us that hurt people, and the opposite, that healed people, heal people. The idea that punishment will solve our problems feeds into the creation of more hurt people. Punishment of any kind is violence, and violence is a difficult cycle to break. We Unitarian Universalists who are theistic believe in a loving God. It is a cornerstone of our faith. We believe, as you use, that we come from one source, which is love, and that when we die, we return to that love. Believing this, how can we justify that anything less than love will save us in this life? And by us, I mean everyone. Apart from our belief in the inherent worth and dignity of all people, our faith has, as another cornerstone, believed in the human potential for goodness. Not that we will all always act as our best selves. I certainly don't. Ask Ted about the drive over. But that we all have the potential to do and be better than we are today or that we were yesterday. Punishment limits our ability to live into this potential. Taking a turn to the personal for a moment, as a young person, I am not going to recount my sins for the internet, but I did not always act well. I occasionally did things that were violent and temperamental. I once received a technical foul in a basketball game for poor sportsmanship when I disagreed with the ref's call. It was well earned, unfortunately. Looking back, I can see that there are things I did that would have, in other circumstances, gotten me suspended or worse from school, or might have had other consequences. Like if I were a Black child, I'm not sure that I would have been treated as well as I was, or given the chance to do and be better. In what might have been a cutting-edge approach at the time, when I was still in elementary school, I had been violent and was given the opportunity to participate in the closest thing envisioned at the time of a restorative justice circle to bring me back into community, along with the person whose poor behavior had preceded my poor reaction. This was before zero tolerance policies and the school to prison pipeline, fortunately for me. It didn't quite heal the relationships that were harmed, but it did restore some equilibrium and helped me have a better grasp on understanding the consequences of my actions and taking responsibility for them. I had a long way to go before fully understanding this, but was given the space and the tools to begin to understand, to do and be better, that I know are not made available to all children and youth and adults who need them today. Abolition does seek for an end to the prison industrial complex. People who are imprisoned are traumatized by the experience. I'm not sure there are any exceptions to that statement. Those who are eventually released to return to society do so not only with limited rights, blatantly and systemically discriminated against, in voting, employment, housing, education, public benefits, and jury service, but also because of with some combination of deep personal, interpersonal, and systemic trauma, but not the tools and support necessary to overcome them. That being said, while I do want prison abolition, I am also kind of grateful that we aren't there yet. The current presidential administration and all those who are currently causing harm need to be held accountable, and we are way too far away from being able to do that in any other way. Now, I want to name a few things that don't seem related to prison abolition, but are. First, the militarization of police forces and other enforcement agencies like ICE. This prepares physically and mentally the people in these roles to be at war with an enemy. That enemy is the people. Brown people, Black people, and anyone else who even appears to interfere. Those who are meant to serve and protect have instead become a paramilitary force. Militarization visibly others us into us's and them's. Second, yes, the current administration has launched a war against Venezuela, but it has also launched a war against Minnesota. Apart from the physical violence we're seeing, federal government agencies are imposing economic sanctions as well for Medicaid, agriculture, assistance for needy families, and some social services. This as ICE agents swarm Minneapolis. A colleague shared earlier this week that there were already 5 times as many ICE agents in the city as there were police, 3,000 versus 600. This is related to the next point. Third, Michelle Alexander wrote in her new introduction to the new Jim Crow, published for the book's 10th anniversary in 2020, that mass incarceration was transitioning in two primary ways. One, releasing some people who have been incarcerated into the world via ankle monitors and other surveillance tools that allow them to look like they're part of the world, but physically and mentally keep them locked up. And two, moving from caging citizens to caging immigrants and sometimes citizens, and now we've also seen caging of indigenous people, of the Oglala tribes of Minneapolis. People who have been kidnapped off the streets and violently removed from their communities, sometimes in front of their families, to be held and deported without due process. Last, although my hot takes and prophetic witness on what is happening are interesting, helpful, and necessary, we cannot be simply talking about what we resist. As abolition teaches us, that is only half the work at best. The other half is in building. Destruction in many ways, like the violence done to those incarcerated, leaves only ruins. The greatest strategy for undoing the harm and terror of this world is in creating strong, vibrant communities that offer a different vision of this world. It's what Minneapolisans are doing now. They are patrolling, witnessing, rejecting ICE, yes, providing spaces of respite and comfort, taking care of each other's children and youth, and doing the work of protecting their communities while also making real the kind of world we dream of. We will never overcome the oppressions that keep us all confined in our potential, the systems that we perpetuate to keep us from one another in the false hope of saving ourselves, the violence we support by misguided belief that someone must always pay, the authoritarianism we're seeing take over our democratic republic if we do not make alternative lives and communities that work differently, better, and more justly for all of us. It will only be when we witness and acknowledge and hold one another accountable for the harms and injustices of society and seek to undo them in each moment, each life, each generation that we can begin to bring to fruition the wildest imaginations of our dreams. Our work is to continue planting seeds as we also tend to the plants bearing fruit and making changes one space, one act, one utterance at a time. Together is the only way we can save each other and ourselves, that we can all be free. This is what we mean when we say our faith is centered on a liberating love. King said often that the moral arc of the universe is long, but it bends toward justice. And President Obama added the caveat that the arc does not bend of its own accord, but that we do the work of bending it. These words were adapted from our own Unitarian ancestor, the Reverend Theodore Parker. So our heritage calls us to remember the work is not ours alone, and it is our work to do. If you would please rise and lift your voice in song with me.